Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of the Vinny Eastwood Show. My very special guest is Ed Opperman. Ed, welcome to the program.
Hey, Vinny, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too, brother. And you sent me a message only yesterday, Facebooking me, telling me how great you are about analysing certain things and whatnot. And I accidentally didn't copy-paste the exact same thing so I could actually read out the thing for the listeners. So, if you could divulge just a little bit about who you are and what you do, for my sake as well as the listeners, I'd be much obliged.
Okay, great. My name is Ed Opperman. I'm a private investigator. I'm the president of Opperman Investigations, which is based out of Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I'm also the president of Accurate Information Recovery, which is based out of Henderson, Nevada. And so as a PI, I do all the regular PI stuff, asset searches and background reports and all that kind of stuff. And as a digital forensic investigator, what I do is computer forensics, cell phone forensics. People will send me hard drives and computer cell phones, and I'll dump the data off the phone and create a report that we can use as an exhibit in court.
Handy man to have around in a society where everything's recorded by the New World Order, I assume.
Yeah, it's good to have me around for sure. I think so.
And what's some of the things that you've been working on lately?
Well, this Wienergate thing, I'm kind of back involved in that just a bit. The first go around with the Wienergate thing, I was sent a phone and we examined one of the phones in the Wienergate thing to recover some of the chats going back and forth with Wiener and one of his women. And just in the second go around, my agent is representing this girl, Sydney Leathers, who is the new girl who's exposing Wiener. So that's probably...
Whoa, hold on a second. Let me just see if I've got this straight. Leathers is exposing Wiener.
I know, it's too easy, right?
You can't make this stuff up, bro. Life is too freaking weird, isn't it?
I hear you.
And for those who are unaware, I think this actually kind of includes me. What is Wienergate?
Oh, okay, that's right. Yeah, you're from New Zealand. Anthony Weiner was a congressman a couple of years ago, and what happened was he used to like to go on Twitter, and like a lot of guys do. He goes on Twitter, he has a couple of drinks, right? He's a married guy, by the way. He's married to the woman he's married to is a real big shot in the Hillary Clinton campaign. She's a big aide to Hillary Clinton, and he was a senator. And he was texting back and forth and tweeting back and forth with women online, and even some half-naked pictures, He's a big workout guy, goes to the gym a lot, so he's taking pictures of a bare chest, in the mirror. And so he got, that came to light, and he had to resign from the Congress. And now he's running for mayor of New York City, which you may be able to tell. I have some background in New York City. And this new woman came forth. He said he had stopped texting back and forth with these women, and he was working on his marriage. He even had a baby. And but now it turns out that he was back involved with a couple more women and texting back and forth and doing all this kind of stuff. It's in the news again.
Yeah. Is it raining where you are?
No, it's not. No.
It's really strange. I hear this kind of like odd interference coming through the line here. I don't know what it is. But anyway, is he still running for New York Congress? And what's the actual significance to this? Does it actually really matter? Is there some form of scumbaggery being exposed here, or is it just another horny congressman?
Yeah, I think it's a horny congressman, is what I think, and he's still running. He's not giving up. And you got to imagine what these New York papers, because they're real wise guys when it comes to these headlines. And look at this, Wiener this, Wiener that, exposing Wiener. And her name is Leathers, so it even gets even better. And but I gotta hand it to him. The guy has courage to be going into these debates and stuff like that with all this baggage.
Yeah, debates with the masses. So it's the Wiener versus Leathers mass debates.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
My God. Well, it couldn't be more of a gift to the mainstream media, don't you think? Because they love to use really crappy puns, not unlike myself, in order to distract from real issues. And I was wondering, as a private investigator, are there any actual real, significant issues that you reckon maybe should be covered instead of this particular case?
Oh boy, don't get me started. If you read my email I sent you, I was talking about the case I was involved with Sarah Palin and Todd Palin back in Alaska. And that was, you'd think this would be headline news every single day. Because my client, who was a prostitute in Alaska, her name was Shirley Tripp, and she was working out of an apartment in Alaska over there, and she had a little ad in the back of Craigslist. Are you familiar with Craigslist?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so she was giving the massages with the happy ending from her apartment over there in Alaska, but one of her clients, according to her, was Todd Palin. And she also claimed that Todd Palin was sending clients over to her, and she would she would document the activity that went on between her and the clients, and then would report back to Todd Palin. So what happened was, is she's going along doing this stuff. She has a physically challenged child, and one day there's a knock at the door. There's a flashbang. 30 cops come busting in to investigate this Craigslist massage parlor prostitution client, and 30 cops come busting in. DHS with machine guns, the whole thing. They arrest her for prostitution. And they hold her there and they say, listen, we want you to talk. We know that you're involved with these big politicians and important people. We want you to talk. But she kept her mouth shut. And what happened was she was arrested for prostitution in Anchorage, Alaska. And she tried to sell her story to the National Enquirer. And they bought the story. They offered her $50,000. And they gave her 5 polygraph examinations by retired FBI agents. And she passed every single one with flying colors. And then what happened was, it's kind of interesting, is that the police chief of the Anchorage Police Department issues a press release. And what he says is that, hey, we investigated all these accusations, everything that's in the National Enquirer, we investigated everything. We checked their computer, we checked their hard drive, we checked their cell phone, we checked their Rolodex, and there's no evidence of any involvement with Todd Palin.
Whenever somebody of officialdom says the words together, no evidence, it always to me thinks okay, then what are they trying to cover up here, bro?
Vinny, wait till you hear this, because the police chief comes back and he says, well, you know what? We never really investigated anything. And he actually says, as a matter of fact, we didn't even write that press release. Sarah Palin's attorney wrote the press release, and we just issued it on our letterhead.
Hey.
This should be front-page news.
Hey, what can I say? The media's controlled, and I really get sick of this kind of stuff going down. You know what's going to happen, right? DHS and all these scumbaggery agencies of the New World Order that are operating inside the United States and want to destroy the United States, I could guarantee you, they've just got this information so that they can blackmail Sarah Palin into doing whatever they want.
I totally agree with you, and I believe that just about everybody in high places has some kind of dirt on them that's been dug up and it's held over their head, and that's why they do the bidding of these elites, whoever they are.
Isn't that interesting, how you can't get high up without being down and dirty first?
I agree with you, and they catch you when you're low up, and they hold it over you, and it's in the back of your head always, it's back there, they have it. And there's a couple of guys who I could think of specifically. I don't want to mention their names on them.
Mm-hmm. Well, imagine what kind of a stress this might put on your daily life, knowing that at any moment, if you did something good for the people of the United States, you could have your entire career sabotaged and destroyed by the government.
Absolutely. And even, if you look at the history of J. Edgar Hoover, the whole FBI was based on his files and blackmailing and all the dirt that he had on politicians and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I think MK Ultra indeed experimented with LSD safe houses in New York in the 70s. But hey, it was the 70s. in order to get dirt on Congress people, like they'd get them tripping and have them with agency-paid prostitutes and things like that, and they'd have double-sided glass so that they could take pictures of them while they were doing this kind of thing, in order to blackmail them into doing whatever they wanted as well. So, control of the... isn't it interesting, the control of the rulers? Like the rulers behind the rulers are the ones who can blackmail them. What kind of significant case does this really present? I mean, let's say the information really did come out. I mean, we're trying to put it out here now, but it's not going to become national news because the national news is controlled, and they don't want to put it out until it's an opportune moment, do they?
Absolutely, because a lot of what she told me was confirmed. As a matter of fact, the day we find, it was even more because when some of the evidence, her hard drive and her computer and stuff like that, was released from the Anchorage Police Department, that same day that it reached my office was the same day that Sarah Palin announced on Sean Hannity that she wasn't going to run for president. But there was more evidence still being held over there at the this Anchorage Police Department. There's only like 600 cops in the whole state of Alaska. It's a small police department. But they were holding some more stuff, and we worked on this thing for like a year to get the rest of this stuff out, and they destroyed the evidence in defiance of a judge's order, of a court order we got, and they still destroyed the evidence. But what happened was this, this should be, like I said, this should be mainstream media news, because what happened was, you remember Colombia, right? Obama goes down to Colombia, and the Secret Service agents in Colombia go down and visit the prostitute in Colombia, and they don't want to pay her. And there's a big giant scandal. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, Shirley Tripp, my client, she always used to say to me, she says, Ed, man, I hate cops. Because they come up there, they get a massage, they get a happy ending, they don't want to pay. Right? She says, I hate cops. They never want to pay. And as soon as this thing happened in Colombia and it started hitting the news, I get a call from Shirley Tripp. Hey, Ed. I know that Secret Service agent. I know him. She knew his name. She knew he was in Alaska. She knew everything. And she said, he did the same thing to me. I took him off and he didn't pay me. Okay? And this escalated into a congressional investigation and a congressional hearing. I examined, we had documents, we had receipts and stuff that went, we did affidavits that went into this congressional investigation and hearing against the Secret Service to uncover additional misbehavior of the Secret Service. So a lot of what we've been saying all along was confirmed in a congressional hearing, and it's still not news. It's still covered up. It's blacked out. She wrote a book about this. Her name is Shirley Tripp, and it's on Amazon. And her book is called Boys Will Be Boys. And but just look it up by the name Shirley Tripp, and she describes all of this except for the congressional investigation, which happened later.
With this, I see a pattern here of sexuality in the higher levels, and I've heard, and I haven't had this 100% confirmed, that there's also a lot of gay prostitution and things like that being used to blackmail congressmen, and there's also a heavily involved occult element with this as well. Do you have any evidence to that effect?
No more personal evidence than anybody else in my business who investigates and researches these kind of things. But I would agree with you 100% that there is a lot of pedophilia and occult activity going on in high places. That's what I believe. And, Barney Frank was a congressman here. He was a very powerful Democratic congressman. And his boyfriend living in his home was running a gay escort service. And this was back in the 70s and the 80s. And then there was even a thing that happened in the Reagan White House where a bunch of gay escorts were paraded through the White House, giving a tour of the White House. Did you know that?
No.
Oh, no. Yeah, those are more widely reported stories that I could always go back for you and research and give you, lay all that out for you. Those are widely reported stories that were reported in the Washington Post and the Washington Times back in the 70s and 80s. So there's a lot of that that goes on.
Especially at good old Bohemian Grove. Apparently there's many gay porn stars and things of that nature that make their way in there to service the elite of the world.
I would totally agree with you. And if you look at some of the other cases I've been involved with, like the Tiger Woods case, I did all the cell phones in the Tiger Woods case to document that these women who were coming forward actually did have a relationship with Tiger Woods. And Tiger Woods, the golf star.
Yeah. Hey, do you know what the difference is between a Cadillac Escalade and a golf ball? Tiger Woods can drive a golf ball 400 yards.
Okay, pretty good. Pretty good. Okay.
If anybody remembers, Tiger Woods couldn't get his Cadillac Escalade more than a couple of yards from his house before crashing it into a tree. That's the joke.
Well, yeah, I get the joke. Well, the wife was chasing him with a golf club. You know, she broke the windows out, you know?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that poetic justice? You know, golf pro cheats on his missus, she chases him out with a golf club.
You can't make this stuff up.
I know. Hey, life is too freaking weird. I love it. Okay, well, Ed Opperman is my guest, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back after the break at the VinnyEastwoodShow.com. It looks like we're going to have a very down and dirty show indeed. Back in just a few minutes. Don't you go anywhere.
No matter where you live, globalism affects you. Did you know that the Vinny Eastwood Show has more subscribers than New Zealand Herald TV and is New Zealand's most popular YouTube news channel, where warm-hearted humour and a list of awesome guests talk about crucial issues which the mainstream media ignore. A show where you, the listener, can phone up with questions, comments and suggestions of guests. Vinny is building a hub to connect truthers with raw information they need to become active. He can help you gain further skills such as website building, producing audio and video, and creating revenue streams in your own multimedia environment. Because Vinny supports such a wide range of people in the truth movement, he is not government or corporate backed and relies entirely on your donations. Give now, give generously, or subscribe for $10 a month for access to ad-free video archives. Just visit the VinnyEastwoodShow.com and click donate.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. My very special guest is Ed Opperman, private investigator extraordinaire. And I was wondering, Ed, how did you get into being a private investigator? I know one other private investigator, Grace Hayden, and she was a police prosecuting sergeant for 15 years. Did you used to be a cop?
No. No, a couple of my ex-partners were cops, but I got started on the other end of the spectrum. When I grew up, I was a member of the Yippies. I was a Lower East Side political activist and a street protester, and Yippies, Abby Hoffman and those guys, and used to hang out at any Yippie headquarters. So I met a lot of guys, part of the Jewish Defense League, and different guys, like a lot of skullduggery, a lot of guys that were informants and COINTELPRO guys. I was around a lot of stuff. So what happened was I became friends with a private investigator over in Brooklyn who did a lot of organized crime defense for organized crime cases. And what I did was I developed a source where I had a source in a phone company. And I can get a copy of your phone bill. All I needed was your phone number. I can get a copy of your phone bill, all the numbers you dialed out of your house. At the top of the thing had your name, address, and sometimes your social security number, sometimes your work phone number, and sometimes even your bank account number. So this was very valuable information back in 1980, back in, I don't want to date myself. This is a long time ago, back in the 80s. So I quickly made a name for myself as an information broker, selling this information to lawyers and private investigators in New York City. And I was, set up camp in this PI's office there in Brooklyn. And he was involved in some of the biggest cases, organized crime cases of the time. And for my days with the Yippies, I had met a lot of the big civil rights attorneys, like Bill Consular and Jerry Lefcourt. So I just fell into this, but mostly for the defense, not in any kind of prosecution stuff. But I will work now if someone's being a victim of cyber stalking or things like that. I will work with local prosecutors and local police departments and to investigate that and help prepare a case.
What was your motivation?
To get into the PI business?
Yeah, I mean, did you feel like there was something wrong with your country and it needed you or something?
I felt that there was something wrong with my country when I was a young man in high school, hanging out with the Yippies in Lower East Side politics, demonstrating and struggling against the oppression of my country. But then, I became 18, 19, 20, and I needed to make a living. And this is a way for me to make a living. And the people who I had grown up around and made connections with were these kind of people. So I made these connections with private investigators and other kind of investigators. Like I said, down at Yippie headquarters, it was a real stream of people coming through there. People like Al Sharpton and the people from High Times Magazine, people from just a wide variety of people coming through there that I made a lot of connections with.
I was wondering if you could kind of sort of tell me a story, like your vision of the United States and what it really is nowadays from the private investigator point of view, because if you've been in this for 20, 30 years or so, you must have seen and heard some really strange and horrific things.
Yes, I have, and I don't feel that our country is in a very good place. I'm not very optimistic on what's going on here in America, to tell you the truth. I know you have a humorous show, but it's the fact. We can only enjoy our day and love the people around us, but we're living under serious oppression in this country, and a serious police oppression, and from our government and our military and all and the banks who run everything and are robbing us blind and basically treating us like slaves. And I've seen this gradually, because you got to remember, how old are you, Vinny?
28.
28. Okay, my goodness, my man. Okay, you got a long road ahead of you. Okay, because when I was 18, 19 years old, we didn't have the internet. You couldn't look this stuff up. Okay, but I was hanging out down there at Yippie headquarters and WBAI radio in New York, and we had people like Mae Brussels coming down, and we had people like Bob Fass and Paul Krasner from The Realist. So the way we got our information back in those days was from newspapers. Guys, like 20 guys would get together, try and raise up money. You'd buy a printing press and you'd put out a newspaper like Yipster Times or Overthrow Magazine. And this is how we got out the word back in those days about the Trilateral Commission and about Bohemian Grove and these kind of things. Because back in those days, if you tried to tell people about it, they thought you were crazy.
Nothing's changed.
But at least now you could point them to something, and there's radio shows you could point them to.
That's true.
Back in those days, trilateral commissioning and Council on Foreign Relations was a huge conspiracy theory that no one believed.
Well, how did you find that kind of information out?
I was attracted to it. I guess I knew that something was wrong, and that and once I heard it, it just, the ring of truth was just so correct to me. And then I was in touch with a lot of people who were the big leftists of the early, of the 70s and the 80s, who were fighting the good fight out there on the street back in New York. And just, people like Paul Krasner and WBAI Radio and Bob Fass and these kind of things who were truth speakers back at the time.
And did you have some kind of a mentor?
Yeah, I did. I would say my mentor was a couple of guys, a couple of yippies who were rough street fighters, a guy named Fred Gotbetter, another guy named Mario, who were rough and tumble street fighters in the struggle. And they taught me a lot, and both are dead now. One died of AIDS, and they both died. One died of drug abuse, and the other died of AIDS. And a lot of the guys back in those days are all gone or in jail. Even Dana Beal, who was the leader of the Yippies, and survived years and years and years. Now, just recently caught a bogus drug bust, a marijuana charge, and did the guy's like 70 years old, and then they got him in jail for 5 years.
How does it feel to see those people who have really taught you so much and have such high quality to their character being oppressed in the way that they are on bogus charges?
How does it feel? Okay, well, it seems like everyone I know who struggled against oppression, who resisted against the government, had a rough life. Look at Abby Hoffman, suicide. Even guys like Bill Kunstler, who was was a civil rights attorney here in America, real tough guy, wasn't afraid of the government, took on. And he was a guy who was both dealt with the radical protesters, and also later on, I found out he was representing a lot of these organized crime guys in these other cases I was involved in. And it seems like if you're going to take this road like Vinny Eastwood does, and we're going to resist oppression, you're going to have a rough time. It's not going to be easy, but we can't give up. We have to resist. We cannot give up, and we have to struggle with every bone in our body. A good friend of mine, Douglas Dietrich, I'm sure you've had him on your show. Okay?
A number of times, yeah.
Douglas Dietrich, right, he's exposing Satanism, at the highest level, exposing child abuse at the highest levels. And his personal life is under attack and under constant attack. So this is the life we've chosen, my friend, and this is what we're gonna do. If we want to resist, we're gonna face these kinds of things. But I think it's worth it, and I think that we can win. I think we can win.
And in my opinion, it's not really much of a choice. It's like a lack of options. Once you know the truth, you don't. It's almost like a normal life, as many people would term it, no longer exists for people like us. It's like once you've been down the rabbit hole, you can't get out of Wonderland.
There are some people who can walk to Starbucks and step over a homeless man practically dying in the street, and there's some people who can't. And there's some people who can see a country dying and can just look the other way and turn on Paris Hilton, and there's some people who can't.
I was having a conversation with some of my listeners over the last couple of days. We had this big meeting about this thing called a GCSB bill. It's basically a government surveillance bureau here in New Zealand that has the NSA actually has offices in their building. So one can only really logically assume that they're merely a foreign branch of the NSA. And the bill's being passed, and it's about basically being able to spy on anybody, warrantless wiretaps, whatever they want. And as an activist, it dawns on you fairly quickly that not only is this legislation not being passed to protect anybody from any kind of criminal, but in fact to protect the government from any type of person who is an activist or a researcher who's exposing the government's criminal behaviour. And to me, the most significant portion of this is to say, look, it's part of the New World Order agenda. And one of the arguments that I was having was with a girl who's saying that we don't need to or we shouldn't try and talk about the New World Order at this point because people aren't ready for it. And in my opinion, people will never be ready for it. I mean, I was not ready to hear about the New World Order when I heard about it. I went through a huge, massive, bout of depression and rage and so on and so forth when you realise that you're a slave and your country is being destroyed, right? And so the key here is something that the CIA figured out is repetition. Is that if you can repeat over and over and over again this particular type of information about the broader agenda, that's the only way you can actually really get it out there. And she says, oh, but it's not the right time, it's not the right time. And I go, when is the right time? Is the right time once you've been microchipped so that the bankers can just turn off your chip and you can't buy food? Is the right time when every single piece of information on the entire world that is ever released, whether it be by phone calls, emails, or internet database search, so that they can shove a Hellfire missile right down your throat through a drone strike? Is that when we should start resisting? Is that when we should start exposing the New World Order? That's BS. The time to resist, the time to expose the truth is, and always has been, right frickin' now. What are we waiting for?
I totally agree with you, brother. I totally agree with you. And, I have a child, I have a 12, a lot of these kids today, these 12-year-old, 13-year-old kids, they're aware of the Illuminati, and they're aware of these symbolisms that we see all the time, like the all-seeing eye and these Illuminati symbolisms and stuff. And it concerns me because are they being desensitized to it? Like, are they being brought up in a life to say, well, the Illuminati control the Illuminati, or whatever we call them, the New World Order, whatever we want to call them, that we're all that are we hurting them by teaching them that that basically we're all slaves, or will they grow up to resist? I don't know. With all the fluoride in our water and the TV on all the time and the radio and the music, always hypnotizing us all the time. Is there any hope for the new generation to break out of this? I don't know. I can tell you back in the 70s and the 80s, we lived a much freer life than we do today. Just in the United States, I think it's 25% of the public has some kind of an arrest record or probation or some kind of a government authority hanging over them. And you really can't step out of line whatsoever here any longer without getting shut down. And I can't see, I don't know if it's going to get better or not, but we do need to keep resisting.
Well, I think it's just the point that you understand what the agenda of the New World Order is to destroy all freedom, all health, all medicine, all transparency, forever. Forever. That's the future that we've got to look forward to if we do not resist. And people need to understand this very dark and terrible reality that you don't have a choice. I mean, and trust me, doing nothing is a choice, okay? Doing something on behalf of the New World Order, facilitating its agenda in any way, shape or form is a choice. Resisting is a choice. And the difficulty is, how do you know whether or not your resistance is being effective? And a lot of people start resisting, then they find out that life gets a heck of a lot harder, their finances get hit, their homes get raided. I've got a friend right now, Vince Seamer, who exposed massive judicial corruption within New Zealand, who's currently spending a 6-week stint in prison because he reported that a judge committed a crime. And he handed himself into the authorities willingly with a smile on his face because he knows that 6 weeks in prison is nothing compared to a corrupt judiciary that can send anybody to prison for any reason, for any length of time that they want. It's kind of like sometimes you have to realize the significance of your own life and the stand that you take serves as an example for others. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show. My very special guest is Ed Opperman, private investigator extraordinaire. And we were just talking over the break about how there's so many people like, what was his name, Al Sharpton?
Al Sharpton. A lot of guys in the States will know Al Sharpton. And he's a New York City guy who was a Reverend Al Sharpton, and he's one of these guys back when I knew in high school who was a good street protester, carrying the for the left and for civil rights, for good causes. He's right up there with Jesse Jackson and Martin Luther King, And then, as the years go by, there's a great story about Al Sharpton about how when he ran for president, his campaign was run by the same right-wing dirty tricksters who worked for Richard Nixon. Okay. So, and it's the same thing because they find out there's some kind of dirt in his background that they find out, and they can kind of put him up in high places and then manipulate him like a little puppet.
What I find is, and we just mentioned this over the break, is there's a lot of really talented people in the activist community who are radio show hosts, magazine editors, or researchers, fighters in court, and so on and so forth. And they don't pass on because of any particular scumbaggery. They live rich and full lives, and they get to expose copious quantities of things. But when they're gone, there doesn't seem to be anybody of the younger generation to come up and replace them and improve on what it was that they were trying to do. Have you ever noticed that? Is there? I don't know how many people you've known over your life who have just done really significant and amazing things in service to the community and the country, who when they die there's no younger person to just pick up the mantle and pick up where they leave off, this kind of thing. It's just everybody's just consumed with their own little petty squabbles now, and they don't really have even the opportunity let alone the inclination that these elder patriots did. What is it? What has caused that? Why are people so apathetic nowadays that they don't want to or can't do what those in our past who have really inspired us and indeed really given us the fuel, the get-go out there? Why isn't anybody really improving on that? It just seems like we're still running to catch up with those in our past who were way ahead of their time.
Yeah, the younger guys do seem to be like a carbon copy and a poor copy of the older guys, the legends, you know. But one thing we do have is this internet radio now. It's a great forum. It's much better than we had when we were coming up. Like not only did we, to get the word out, we had to put these newspapers out, but we also used to make posters and go out in the middle of the night in New York City with these posters and poster up on the wall with our conspiracy theories and our information and stuff like that. So we're way ahead of that. Okay, with these internet radio shows, we have this. But now what happens with this, though, is now how do they get us? The infighting between all the hosts and all the different stations. And the backbiting and the talking behind each other's back. You get someone on the phone right away, blah, 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 they want to talk about everybody else. Now, I grew up with this. I grew up with the original COINTELPRO stuff. I've seen it firsthand when I was in high school, coming out of high school, my early 20s. I saw the real COINTELPRO, and I saw how they divide people, and they divide and conquer.
It's really sad.
But now they have it to such a science. Yeah.
Sorry,
they can whisper in people's ear and get people to work against each other and talk about each other behind each other's back, and even on the radio. And it seems like anybody you try to ally with, create an alliance with, they're fighting with someone else you're trying to create an alliance with.
Well, didn't the founding fathers warn against entangled alliances?
I suppose they did.
And this is something that I believe the Patriot movement also needs to recognise. And I hear what you're saying. And in the background of talk radio, you would not believe the stuff that the Patriots tell me about each other, you know. And it comes to the point where even when they're correct, even when they're giving you actual evidence of truthers lying, manipulating, stealing, demonizing, and being full-on COINTELPRO, what occurs to me is that, you know, these are my heroes you're talking about, and you know what happens is you get really demotivated when you find out that the people you respect, the people who were your prime inspiration for fighting for truth and liberty, find out, you know, they just turn out to be something completely different to what your ideal was. And it really depresses you. And I think this might be part of it. This is part of the struggle that we go through every day, is not only do we recognize that there's this evil, you know, massive New World Order overarching agenda with goodness knows how many informants and agents and surveillance and such and blah, blah, blah. But also we're really fighting a war against the negatives of our human condition. And this entire society is almost adapted to bringing those negatives out.
Exactly. One of our weaknesses is our ego. Okay, everybody knows that. And what in the brainwashing, the constant brainwashing, is one of the things that they're constantly pounding into us, is to glorify ourselves and our ego and our sexual desires and our greed. These are the character traits that they're trying to build into us and build into our children, to be greedy, to be sexually perverse in every possible way. So I even have to examine myself constantly and say, how am I being brainwashed, and how am I being manipulated, and who's handling me? And because everyone, you know, I've worked on some of the biggest news stories, 24-hour news stories in the past few years. The Tiger Woods case was a 24-hour news story. The Charlie Sheen case, I worked behind the scenes on that. My client was the woman he attacked in that hotel room in New York. These big major, the George Zimmerman case, I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, yeah.
So I've seen how there's a lot of behind-the-scenes manipulation by a small group in the media, in Hollywood and in the media, these agents and PR guys who can control everything going on in mainstream media. So it comes down, there's a brainwashing that comes down through that and filters into us, our alternative media guys, that we're still manipulated by that. We can't help it. And we're still motivated by those same kind of things.
And what occurs to me as well is that the alternative media is very rarely breaking their own significant stories. What occurs to me is that most of the time what we're doing is looking at what the mainstream media reports and then deconstructing it and then reporting the truth side of it. But what I find significant about that phenomenon is that the mainstream media are still dictating what news we hear about. You know? We can only show people different sides of what the mainstream media isn't saying. And it's just... It's click whoring, basically, right? And
they're driving the agenda. They're driving the agenda. They're driving the locomotive, and we're following along behind them. And what are we doing? Throwing little rocks at them, or whatever we're doing, bickering amongst ourselves while we do that.
Yeah.
So you're right. We need to come up with our own ideas, our own proposals, and how to change the system, and get these forward, and instead of just bickering about what they're coming forward with.
Well, the problem is we're trying to reach out to, I don't know. Well, hold on a second. I don't try to reach out to the general public. Okay, I'm not trying to wake people up here with this radio show. The point of this radio show is not to cover the news and up-to-date kind of stuff. This is actually just to interview the activists and people of significance who we really should be listening to, people like yourself, not to put too fine a point on it, Ed. Because of the fact that we need to have a personal relationship with those who are delivering us information, I believe. We need to know who these people are, we need to know their backstories, and we need to know that they're just real people. And you get lost and you don't know who these real people are if all you're doing is reading significant major media pieces that they're doing all over the time and basically serving the general news agenda. And the reason why I'm not trying to wake people up is because there's many other people doing that. Okay, that's the reason why I use a lot of humor on this show. Because it's not so much waking up that's my motivation. It's actually keeping people awake. Because if you keep hearing all this conspiracy, all this propaganda, all this horrible stuff all around you, you get really depressed, you get really afraid, and it shuts you down. And that's my motivation, is to prevent people from shutting down through all the depression and the scumbaggery and the horrific things that they see and hear on a daily basis.
I agree with you, and humor is very important, and the hippies use humor, and street theater and street performance art. These are the creative things that we need to be taking hold of and using as a weapon against the bigger weapon against us. We need to take the weapons that we have, the radio, our information, humor, art, street performance, these kind of things, and use it to overthrow the media that's pounding down on us all the time with this repetitive hypnotism that they're putting on us. About waking people up, okay? So many people in this movement who say, well, okay, I woke up to this, I woke up around 9/11 when they woke up. But you got two guys who think they're both awake, and they don't agree about anything. Okay, they don't believe this guy. They don't endorse this guy's a double agent. This guy's, So how awake are we, man? Who knows? That's a whole nother thing. But at least we know something's wrong. We all know something's wrong as long as we're moving in the right direction. Because there's 310 million of us, okay, in the United States, and there's only a couple of million of them. We could go knock on their door and say, hey.
We'll be right back after the break at thevinnyhoustonshow.com.
If you take an active interest in maintaining the optimum health and well-being of yourself and your family, the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine is the magazine you've been waiting for. Having taken Australia and New Zealand by storm, the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine is now available in the UK and Europe. Visit www.nznaturalmed.co.uk or call 01626 337 531 to order your copy now.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of the fastest 2 hours in talk radio. It's the Vinny Eastwood Show, broadcasting live from the Fukushima irradiated island slave-chained nation of New Zealand, where everybody has a part-time job as an energy saver light bulb, and their mercury fillings are part of the conduction. And my very special guest is private investigator Ed Opperman, and I'm just going to read out his little blurb. I mean, this is how we got Ed on the show. He messages me on Facebook. He didn't even realise it was me. My experience is in online infidelity investigations. I invented a method to trace a person's email back to online dating sites and personal ads. I can discuss the Anthony Weiner story from the perspective of a private investigator that investigates internet infidelity, and a DFI that recovers deleted data from cell phones and computer hard drives. I can discuss my work in digital forensics and high-profile stories like Tiger Woods, Charlie Sheen, Ashton Kutcher, Howard Stern, Sarah Palin, Todd Palin, prostitution scandal and the media cover-up, and the Secret Service scandal in Colombia. I'm a frequent guest on freedomslips.com with Douglas Dietrich, and I've been on with Stew Webb. I can discuss my involvement in negotiating a settlement in the Art Bell feud and lawsuit. I recently presented at the Super Soldier Summit regarding how I met Mark David Chapman and my theory on the Lennon murder. And so I was just like, whoa, we've got a slot open tomorrow on the show. What are you doing tomorrow, bro? And here he is. You know, and also his website, ladies and gentlemen, is emailrevealer.com. That's emailrevealer.com, and he's written a book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator. That's a book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator. Now, as we all know, times are hard for pretty much everybody. Money is getting scarce, and with the amount of things that are being done to activists and truthers all over the place, how they mess with you is they mess with your money supply. Now, there's an old saying that money can't buy happiness, but a lack of money certainly buys a hell of a lot of stress. And so if you can support Ed, go to emailrevealer.com or buy his book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator, because he's doing a lot of, well, judging by what we've seen here, a lot of really significant work that should indeed be supported and discussed quite significantly. Now, Charlie Sheen and Ashton Kutcher, what can you tell us about them?
Well, what happened was, you might remember that Charlie Sheen was in a hotel room at the Plaza Hotel back in New York a couple of years ago, right? And, somehow he wound up naked, covered in blood. And there was a woman who was locked in the bathroom, begging for help and someone to come save her. So what happened was the police came and, they investigated, did a thorough investigation and let him walk away. Here's a guy who's out on probation for attacking his wife with a knife on Thanksgiving evening. And I walked away from that one. But somehow the police didn't see fit to press any charges or anything. And it turns out later on that Charlie Sheen files a lawsuit against my client, Capri Anderson. And what we were able to do was we were able to examine some phones in that case and prove that he was offering her some money and the charges were ultimately dropped. But I was behind the scenes in that case, daily news story, and I was behind the scenes and every detail going on behind the scenes for the whole year that it was in the news.
Well, I mean, can you explain more, or is there certain? Because I've noticed that it's you seem to say just a few things and then just sort of expect me to kind of keep it up, whereas I'm really interested in just keeping on listening.
Well, Okay, here's my opinion on the whole Charlie Sheen thing. Okay, like I said, uh, here's a guy. A lot of people like to think he's a truther. And he's on Alex Jones. And he's coming out with the truth. He's exposing 9/11, right? But now, I'm curious. That if he really was a truther, and that I have in my personal life, with a little bit of truthing that I'm doing. But now, if Charlie Sheen is really a truther, and he's on Alex Jones, and he's exposing the New World Order, there's a lot of stuff in his life that he could be taken down with the snap of a finger. One thing would be this domestic violence case against Brooke Mueller, his wife, where he attacked her. Well, I think he confessed to it. I think he pled guilty to it. But there was a knife involved. There was domestic violence charges involved, and there was a conviction involved in Colorado. But somehow, he doesn't do any time. He walks away from that. Okay, fine. Then there's another case where he's attacking a woman in a hotel room in New York City. And again, there's no charges, there's no arrest, there's no nothing. So I just have to wonder how it is that someone who's a truther, when I know what it's like to be a truther, and I know that if I get pulled over, I'm lucky to get away alive, okay? But somehow this guy who's a major truther, on major shows, on these radio shows with these guys, how is it he's able to dance between the raindrops at the level of things that he's doing?
It's pretty suspicious. Well,
I would say so.
Now, I wonder how many people suddenly kind of lost faith just in the truth movement in general after hearing about these things with Charlie Sheen. And I was wondering, in your opinion, is there an agenda to build people up and then tear them down, and then as a direct result, all the people that were there, building them up and go, yeah, they all either get discredited for promoting them, or they get so depressed that they were so wrong that they stop doing anything altogether as a result?
Yeah, and you're right. I'm sort of doing that myself too, okay, by bringing up that story. But I don't know what to tell you, my friend. You're right. The people who are resisting, whether Charlie Sheen's legitimate or not, or the other guy who's the host on the show, he's on all the time. Okay, fine. They're resisting. Now, then they get up. And a lot of times they do fall. Now, when they fall, is it because of the government oppression taking them down, or because of infighting, COINTELPRO, manipulation, and brainwashing that we're all under? I don't know.
It's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. And I think it's part to do with the hero complex that everybody's got, the savior complex. We want somebody to be our hero, we want somebody to be our savior. And then when we realise that, hey, this person's not who they said they were, you go, oh no, and you just kind of freaking give up. That's what happens when you put somebody up on a pedestal. When they fall off that pedestal, guess who gets crushed when they fall? You, the one who put them up there.
Okay. But that's human nature, because when we're growing up as young men, we look at our father as the greatest man in the world, and then you become old enough, and it's like that Oedipus complex, where you have to challenge your father, you have to become the head of the house or your head of your own house. We have to kind of, keep that in check.
Yeah. We kind of have to move past this whole hero complex, I think, It's just like, you got to be your own hero, because that way you can only really let yourself down, as we do. And I wanted to hear about this Howard Stern case as well. What's this about?
I had a couple of stuff with the Howard Stern show. I tell you, some funny stuff. The first one was there was a producer over there named Jared, and someone had impersonated him and created a dating service ad. Dating profile with his picture on it. So I heard this, and I knew I could investigate that kind of thing, because I invented this method to trace an email address back to online dating sites. So I contacted their Steve Langford, who was their news reporter over there. And so we worked on that, but they kind of blew it on me, because what they did was they kept talking about it on the air, and we couldn't really do a really good investigation. They're talking about it every morning on the show. But what happened later on was, this is a pretty serious thing, was Gary Delabate, Baba Booey, right, who's a really, really nice guy and a really smart guy. He was appointed to a position of the Parks Department in Connecticut, where he was doing his community civic duty in his personal life. Because in his personal life, he's a coach for his kids and his neighborhood guy, and he's very well respected in Connecticut, where he lives, being appointed to this position on the Parks Department Commission. Someone created an anonymous email and sent an email to everyone who was on this commission to vote him in, and saying all kinds of really, really slanderous, outrageous stuff about Gary's character and his personal life. And so when I heard about that, and I knew them already from that point, so I was able to prove that, first of all, the email was fake, and it was created, a fictitious email, just a few minutes before it was sent out. And I was also able to trace it back to the library where it was sent from. And so that was enough to show that the commission there, that it was all a bogus email and these charges were all fake.
And what's your opinion of Howard Stern? Is he a truther or what? Because I'm confused about it, because he's covered a lot of truther type issues, and then I've seen other things where he just kind of like makes fun of it and it just sort of discredits the whole movement. It's just kind of like a game of two halves.
I've always been a fan of Howard Stern way from the 80s, okay, when he was first on WNBC. I was always a fan. I enjoy his humor. I know some of the political people he's involved with there in New York, who are no friends of ours. Okay, I can tell you that. So I gotta say that I think Howard Stern was just who was uninfluenced until just recently, maybe the past few years. He's really influenced by Hollywood now, and I believe that he is a tool of the New World Order being used. What can I say?
Yeah, it's really sad that. He's got quite a significant platform too, doesn't he? What does he have? Like tens of millions of listeners, or something along that nature?
Oh yeah, there's like 20 million subscribers to the XM radio and the Sirius radio. So yeah, he has a lot of influence, and now he's on another TV show too. And if you listen to him, he kind of admits that when he's doing this America's Got Talent show, that he's just a little robot, a little puppet. They put him in there, and they put him there, and he just does whatever they tell him. But the guy's up there in the billionaire category now. So the kind of shoulders you rub with in that area are not the kind of shoulders you and me are going to be rubbing with, my friend. Yeah, until one of us hits it big,
Yeah. And that was something I was wondering about. How rich do you have to be before it becomes guaranteed that you're not a decent person or a decent player anymore? And I theorize that you have to be a multi-billionaire before it's basically guaranteed that it doesn't matter how you made your money, whether you made it honestly or dishonestly or whatever. Once you get up into that category, you have so much power and influence that the New World Order swoops in and has to control you. Otherwise, you're a threat to the whole system.
I totally agree. And they could bring it down in an instant and cut off your financing and destroy you in an instant. Like, look at the guy who invented Friendster, or the guy who invented MySpace. Where are they now? Zuckerberg and Facebook. They were sent on a nice little channel there. They did a nice little paved road for them, and to make a fortune. How about the guy who the first search engine was Yahoo? Where are those guys now? They made a lot of money, but they weren't part of the club. They weren't playing along, or maybe they couldn't get some blackmail on them, or whatever it is, and they put these other guys in. But they're picking and choosing who goes in and who doesn't get in.
What do you think the parameters are between those who are allowed to advance up the chains and those who are demonized and destroyed and all go into hiding?
Good question. Maybe part of it is, do they have enough blackmail on you that they can control what you're doing? Or maybe there's a bloodline, and there's that whole theory about the bloodlines. Are they part of the same bloodline? Because I don't want to mention any names, but this one billionaire in New York City who I was on the periphery of did seem to know everyone and knew their kids growing up and stuff like that. And they all knew each other, and it was just very interesting that I found that way. But I have also known other guys who have gotten into that kind of realm and made billions of dollars, who were street guys and who made it up there with these guys. And so I don't know. I think that the blackmail element is there. I think there also may be the bloodline element, and also too maybe a satanic oath or allegiance or something that you could pledge to get yourself in there. Or maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, because you have a look at these clubs like Skull and Bones, for example. I mean, if you get into Skull and Bones, you're set for life. And the reason you're set for life is because you have to masturbate in a coffin and reveal all your sexual secrets to everybody who can blackmail you.
I agree.
You know, to the point where the president is a Skull and Bones member and the person running against him is also another Skull and Bones member. You know? And I was just thinking about their bones and their members. Again, you can't make this stuff up. There ain't no bones about it. And I have this significant concern that the future of our world is indeed like a satanic dark age, you know? Like they're trying to set up hell on earth.
I agree with you. That they seem bent on creating this perversion in our life, and a perversion toward younger and younger children, and a deeper and more, and even still, when you see these rituals that they do, like at the VMA Awards, in the middle of the Superdome, the Super Bowl, where they have Madonna coming out there and doing this big, gigantic, satanic ritual right in front of our faces, just smacking it right in our faces. And Lady Gaga doing blood rituals, just right in front of our faces. So that we become desensitized to it. So obviously, these guys in high places, the power of this earth, they're on this channel where they have this theory that what they're doing, these rituals and these sacrifices and these symbols that they put on the dollar bill and that they put inside the Washington Monument and stuff like that, it gives them some kind of power that we're not tuned into. So now I'm a Christian guy. As a matter of fact, I was an evangelist. I traveled with a tent ministry for a few years. Okay, I'm a old-fashioned Pentecostal Christian, born-again Christian guy. And I believe, if we're going to believe that the Satanism is real, we got to believe that the Christianity, the other side, is real too. And I've seen the power in it. And I also believe that if you look at a lot of these big cases that I've been involved in, that the 24-hour news cycle. That I've seen these people, even people like Sarah Palin and Todd Palin, and I see that they're only human. They breathe the same air that you and I do, Vinny. They're just as human as you and I, and they're just as fallible as you and I, and they can be taken down just as you and I. And I believe that it could be through the power of prayer and unity and agreement and between us all that we can resist these people and they can be taken down.
And we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show. It's the lighter side of genocide, because in a world so full of chaos and madness, if you lose your sense of humour, you go friggin' nuts. And we were talking about kind of spirituality earlier before, and I've never believed in religion, right? But I believe in a higher power. My vision of God is maybe a little different to some people. I think it's something like a You know what a macroorganism is, you know what a microorganism is. So, you look into the cells in my body and you say there's like 5 trillion cells. Now, to those 5 trillion cells, I'm God. And you look into one of those little cells in there and you find out that those little cells are made up of about 5 trillion other little cells. And to those little cells, that cell above them is God. And you look into those little ones, and so on and so forth, infinitely down the chain. There was a dude in the early 1900s who invented a granite crystal microscope who was able to get 60,000 times magnification. And that's what he discovered, is that normal electrostatic microscopes are 10,000 times magnification. This guy got 60,000 times in the early 1900s, and this has been suppressed. That's what he discovered, that it's life built upon life, built upon life, built upon life. And what my belief is that I'm part of a much larger organism called a macroorganism, or what we would term as God, and above that thing that's God to me is other gods, galaxies and quasars and so on and so forth. That's what my belief structure is. So what I'm here to do is to experience life subjectively and serve the greater organism that I'm a part of. Right? That's my theory of God, and I could be wrong. But regardless of whatever it is, I can't prove that. And it occurs to me that the significance of it is actually irrelevant. What's actually relevant is having a higher belief, believing that you're not just you, that you're not just alone, that you're actually part of a greater whole, that there is much energy out there that you can harness if only you would believe that you are part of a greater whole. And this is something that's occurred to me very recently over the last week when I was going out and protesting against massive pedophile rings, meth dealers, and things like that are operating within the government, is that my spiritual belief is my strength, it is my shield, and I wish only to serve the greater organism, which means I have to serve, Ed, I have to serve you, the listeners, I have to serve the animals on the planet, I have to serve everything that I can really identify as being alive and being part of this greater organism that I've come to recognize as being God. And as a result of that belief, all of the power of every organism within this entire realm, this entire planet, every other cell within this organism that I think is God, gives me energy and allows me to keep doing what it is that I'm doing, even though an ordinary person who had no belief wouldn't be capable of it. And if we're against Satanism, which I most definitely am, there's a great reason for this, just a logical reason, regardless of whatever spiritual beliefs you might have. Have a look at the example of Vietnam POWs. Those who had a strong belief in God had a much higher survival rate in the POW camps than those who were atheists. Those who are atheists, when they're locked away in that room with no hope of rescue, they're alone in that room with no hope of rescue. Those who had higher beliefs in a greater power than themselves were never alone, were never without hope. And that is what keeps them alive. And I think all of us, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever, that mere belief in something greater than yourself, something that is more powerful than evil, just having that belief alone is what will save you. My very special guest, Ed Opperman, has also been in the evangelical circles and so on and so forth. But I'm sure you probably don't agree with my philosophy and so on and so forth. But yeah, it is a satanic agenda that we're up against, and I think it matters not what you call God or how you praise God. It's just whether or not you have any higher spiritual belief, and whether or not you're willing to fight against that which wishes to destroy all goodness in this world.
Vinny, I tell you, I got a lot of respect for you. You're a smart guy, and you remind me so much of myself when I was your age, at 28, 29 years old. I got to tell you something, because that's when I got saved, and I turned my life to Jesus Christ. And I would invite you to really read the New Testament, because if we're fighting against Satanism, right? We know about Satanism from the Bible. Okay, so then we say, okay, well, how'd they fight against Satanism in the Bible? Let's look at that. Okay, through the blood of Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. So I would invite you to take a really good look at that, because there's, my friend, I really do. And I think it's because I was the same way. I was also into the New Age stuff and kind of a universal good against evil kind of thing. And I always knew Satanism was wrong, no matter, even when I was with these mafia guys and at a nightclub in Manhattan, but I always knew, that right from wrong. And I always wanted to do right, just like my kid. When she was a little kid, she always knew right from wrong. She always wanted to do right. And that's something to really be admired. And we need to keep walking in the same direction. But when we're fighting against blood sacrifice and child molestation, we need the power of Jesus Christ to overcome that, man, and the Holy Spirit in our hearts to fight that kind of. Otherwise, I know I wouldn't have made it this far, my friend. I know I'd be either in prison or dead.
Yeah, and I've accepted Jesus as well, and what occurs to me is that a lot of people don't think that Jesus was real. And let's go on that for a second. Let's say just for the sake of argument, Jesus didn't really exist. Okay, then he gets reduced from being a real man with real power and abilities that most people don't have, and he gets reduced simply to be a symbol. What does that symbol of Jesus actually mean? It's self-sacrifice. It's fighting against the bankers. It's doing right by your fellow man. It's being an example to others around you. It's about rejecting hypocrisy and scumbaggery. Just as a symbol, it's perfect example to follow, isn't it?
I totally agree with you. And you got to remember, just like these Satanists know that they need blood sacrifice to get power and to get a relationship with Satan, that we needed that sacrifice 2,000 years ago, the Son of God, the Lamb of God, to be sacrificed, to cleanse away our sins, to wash away our sins, to be the last blood sacrifice necessary, that we could have a relationship with God and receive the Holy Spirit and have that kind of power that a lot of these New Age people are seeking with the, psychic powers, all that kind of stuff like that. You can have that. You can have the gifts of the Holy Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit. And it's a free gift for anybody.
See, my perspective is, in order to gain any of that power, you have to sacrifice of yourself nowadays, I mean, what was my last paycheck? My last paycheck was like $5,000 cash and nearly $12,000 in Westfield shopping centre vouchers, that kind of thing, so I can buy anything out of a mall. And that was the largest and last paycheck I ever received, because I sacrificed all of that. I sacrificed my relationship with my family. I sacrificed all my relationships with all of my friends and all of my comforts and everything to fight for the truth. And again, back to Jesus as the example. He sacrificed himself entirely. Not because he was trying to, be grandiose and so on and so forth. It's because he felt, I believe, he felt an obligation to the entire human race to save all of us. And that's not entirely dissimilar from the reason why I've given up so much in order to do things like this radio show, in order to go to 3 protests in 3 days and cover the things that the mainstream media does not cover, because I believe that I'm doing my part, in short, to serve humanity as a whole. Now, let's change topic a little bit, because I can see that there's probably an awful lot of new agey people and atheistic people who are just preparing to comment on the YouTube video when it comes out. And you go,
God bless them, man. God bless all of them.
Yeah. God bless us, everyone. And like the little Timmy of the Christmas Carol. You met Mark David Chapman, the guy who murdered John Lennon. Now, oh my gosh, what an encounter that must have been. Please tell me the story.
Yeah, well, it was, again, back at the same, I was a senior in high school, okay? And I used to go down, I lived in Staten Island, I used to go down to Yippee headquarters in Manhattan, 9 Bleecker Street. And this little area on the Lower East Side of Manhattan was just an amazing place where there was an enormous amount of marijuana smuggling going on with the Yippies at that time, okay? They had, right next door was Dial a Joint, where they had the phone number 777 cash, and you can call up and get marijuana delivered to your house back in those days. It was in the 70s, okay?
Well, just interject here. We also had a cab company that was selling marijuana that was called Quality Cab. And cab or cabbage is a term for cannabis. And also my sister, when she came back from England, she said, I heard the most awesome answer phone message, Vinny, but promise me, before I tell it to you, promise me that you will not set this to your answer phone message. I go, okay, tell me what it is. And he goes, hello, you've reached Michael. To leave a message, press 1. Or to buy marijuana, press the hash key.
Very good. Very good. Very good.
I'm sorry. I was interjecting from your story. Go ahead.
Well, it was just an amazing time, an amazing place. Guys, like right around the corner was CBGB's, okay? And who came out of CBGB's? People. Madonna was a waitress over at CBGB's, And so. And there was a motorcycle gang around the corner, a very famous motorcycle gang. So this little area of Manhattan was just an amazing place where a lot of things were going on. A lot of people were marijuana smugglers, like I said. Guys, like I'll give you an example. You ever heard of the Rainbow Family? Rainbow Family was this group of kind of hippie kind of guys who were kind of the same kind of people who used to travel around following the Grateful Dead. But this was this group. And, one day, one of the leaders of the Rainbow family was accused of being a KGB agent. Okay, and I asked him about it privately, and he confided in me that yes, not that he was a KGB agent, but that he was paid by the Russian consulate, by the Russian embassy, for his poetry. Okay, but he did receive a stipend from the Russian government. Okay, at this time. So, obviously, they weren't paying for his poetry, okay? The guy couldn't even say hickory dickory dock, all right? But so there was all this kind of skullduggery and just kind of informants and FBI agents and COINTELPRO going on in this area around this stuff. Guys who would get busted on huge marijuana cases, just walk out of it like nothing happened, just left and right, all over this place. So, and that's where I met Mark David Chapman. It was in that atmosphere at that headquarters there. And it was right before he killed John Lennon. It was the weekend before he killed John Lennon. And so looking back, now this haunted me too as a kid, because when I was there at Yippee headquarters, like I said, it was like a ton of pot upstairs, okay? It was like 200 pounds of marijuana upstairs. So we kind of had to guard the door and kind of keep, maintain the traffic, who was coming in and who was going out. So when I was there as this high school student, none of my guys were around. There was kind of strangers hanging around, and Mark David Chapman, and everybody was nervous about Chapman, who was acting very strange and very erratic. He had this big duffel bag. He kept digging around in the duffel bag, saying he was looking for audio tapes that he was going to give to Aaron Kay. Aaron Kay was the Yippie Pie Man. As a political protest, he would hit politicians in the face with a pie. So finally, everyone got spooked by this guy, and everyone left, and it was me along with Mark David Chapman in this room. And finally, I kind of hid around the corner, kept an eye on him, but he was in the reception area. And then I kicked him out. Ultimately, I said, "Hey, look, dude, what do you want?" And I kicked him out, and I sent him across the street where we had a nightclub across the street. And that's the last I saw of him. Now, there were other instances where people showed up acting weird, where we stopped the crap out of them, okay, and we kicked their ass really good. And maybe on another day, at another time, Mark David Chapman could have wound up that way, walked away with a really, with a fat lip, limping away, and then not going to shoot people who we like. So this haunted me. But now later on in my life, looking back at this, I'm looking back at it from the perspective of a guy who, now we have things like Sandy Hook, and we have these kind of, these Boston Marathon crisis actors, and things are staged, and you see how things are kind of different. And I'm looking back at the John Lennon assassination from this perspective. And what I think now is that there were two Mark David Chapmans running around New York City that week. And one was the guy who I met, who was the agitated guy, who was the frantic guy that no one would want to befriend or be around. The same one who confronted James Taylor in the subway station. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but James Taylor's come forward and said, "Hey, man, I ran into that guy in a subway station around 72nd Street subway station, and he had me up against the wall. That Mark David Chapman had him up against the wall." So now, I found out also, too, that a lot of things is that James Taylor, his manager was Peter Asher, who was Paul McCartney's brother-in-law. Paul McCartney's girlfriend's brother was Peter Asher, who was James Taylor's manager. And that Peter Asher was a member of the Process Church of the Final Judgment, the satanic cult, which has been involved in a lot of stuff. The Process Church also had some involvement down there at Yippee headquarters, because a lot of serious involvement, because High Times Magazine was run from guys who were down there at Yippee headquarters. And High Times Magazine, a lot of people don't know, was funded by Hustler Magazine, Larry Flint's Hustler Magazine.
Well, let's continue this on after the break. Ed Opperman, private investigator, emailrevealer.com is my guest. Back in a minute. You listen to the Vinny Eastwood Show. It's my final segment here with Ed Opperman, and we were just talking about over the break how what was his name? Mark David Chapman was connected with the Church of Scientology and Satanism and all of this kind of stuff, and it was just popped into my mind. MK Ultra assassin. Hello. And it occurs to me that there's no such thing as a lone gun, okay? There's no such frickin' thing, okay? Lone gunmen don't exist. Every single one of them throughout history who has ever tried to assassinate a political figure or anything of that nature, you don't even have to investigate for more than 5 minutes before you start to realize that they're connected to the huge satanic agenda. Every time. Every freaking time. Why is it that people are still in denial about this? I mean, you can just make an assumption. You know, you hear about some high-level political figure who's been assassinated or whatever, from Franz Ferdinand in the early 1900s that caused the First World War, to John Lennon, to Andrew Breitbart or whatever. There's always some description of scumbaggery and skullduggery going on in the background that the mainstream media won't report to anybody. Because, hey, as soon as you realise that there is no lone gunman theory, you realise that everything's part of the plan. And they're there to make sure that you don't figure out what that plan is.
Well, when you look at Mark David Chapman, he looks like the poster child of the Manchurian candidate, MK Ultra, mind control assassin. Especially when you look at his mugshot. And then when you start looking into his background, like I said, he was within walking distance of the Church of Scientology. He sent bullets over to Kenneth Anger, the Satanist, who was the big movie producer, Satanist actor in the 70s and 80s. So many connections with this guy with different things. But like I said, the one that I met and the one that James Taylor met was not the same one that the people described who was hanging out in front of the Dakota all that time. Because that guy was a nice guy who was getting along with people. He got along with but who did he get along with, okay? He got along with the doorman. He got along with two girls who we invited out to lunch or dinner. I forget what it was. But then what do we find out about the doorman? Did you know that the doorman in front of John Lennon's apartment was a former Cuban CIA Bay of Pigs fighter? So I know, yeah, but so it can't be more in your face than it is. So the nice guy's over there getting along with the nice Cuban Bay of Pigs guy. And the other one, the nutty one, is running around fighting with everybody, with James Taylor, and trying to fight with me over Yippee headquarters. So it would take a lot of more examination to see what really went on. But it always seems like, again, these satanic cults are behind everything. And I've seen that the Process Church, especially around that time, was around everything. The Manson stuff, the Atlanta child murders, the Son of Sam murders in New York City, and even the OJ trial, like I was telling you off the air about my investigation into the OJ trial and all the connections to the Church of Scientology and to the Process Church, which is going to be my next book, is going to be all about that. I'm going to put all that in writing.
Can I ask as well, just before we go, you said that you were involved in negotiating settlement in the Art Bell feud and lawsuit. I wasn't even aware that there was a feud or lawsuit or whatever, so you're probably going to have to give me a little bit of background here. We've only got about 6 or 7 minutes before we close up the show, so it's going to have to be a quick one.
Okay, really fast. What happened was, you remember John David Oates, David John Oates, who was the reverse speech guy. He was a guest on Art Bell all the time.
Oh, yeah. I think I've interviewed him.
Okay, so okay. Well, Art Bell had to sue him because of defamation. It was a $60 million lawsuit. And there was another character who was a guest on Jeff Rentz. This guy's name was Robert A.M. Stevens, and he went on Jeff Rentz, and he went on Art Bell's show too, and he debated Richard Hoagland. And then he got into a big fight with Richard Hoagland, and he stormed off the air. And then these guys, he got together with Oates, and they were creating websites and defaming Art Bell and all this kind of stuff. And then Robert Stevens used to go on as a guest with Jeff Rentz all the time. And he claimed he was a Navy SEAL, and he worked for NASA, and he was a cowboy and an astronaut and a fireman and all this other kind of stuff, and a spy. Okay? He was this really amazing guy. So what happened was, one day I was just, visiting the Art Bell website, and I clicked on a link to talk about this dispute going on with these people, and I wound up on this message board, and I wound up debating all these characters. And I wasn't a private investigator at the time. I had a paging and cellular phone company in a mall while you sold beepers and cell phones. I had a whole different kind of business. But I was still around this kind of stuff. And so ultimately what happened was Art Bell got word that David Oates had made some threats against Art Bell's life. And Art Bell reported this to the FBI. There was an investigation, but there was no charges filed. But there was a lot of stuff going on in the background with all that. And then ultimately, Art Bell had to sue these guys because they were just nuts and just haranguing Bell with these websites and all this kind of stuff, even radio shows on other stations, and all kind of comments, accusations and stuff. So because of my participation in the website chatter back and forth, I became friends with Bell, and I became in contact with David Oates, and I helped negotiate the settlement for that lawsuit, because David Oates told me on the phone that his plan is that he was going to accept the summary judgment. He wasn't going to respond to the lawsuit, and then he was going to declare bankruptcy. So when I did an affidavit to that effect, you can't do that. You cannot intend to declare bankruptcy and incur debt. You can't incur debt before going into bankruptcy. It would be like going out and getting a bunch of credit cards and then declaring bankruptcy. You would not be able to discharge that debt in the bankruptcy dissolution. So once I presented that affidavit for Art Bell, he was able to hit Oates with that, and they were able to settle the lawsuit. There was another instance where Robert Stevens was threatening my life. Okay, he was writing threats against me, and Art Bell took that information of the threats against me and went to the police department in Pahrump and the courts in Pahrump and got a restraining order against Stevens based on threats made against me. Okay, so that was my connection with that. Then there was another instance where Ted Gunderson, I've known Ted Gunderson for years, and he was also involved with a lawsuit with Bell. And I tried to call him up and settle that as well, but he wasn't interested in settling. He had his insurance company handle that for him. So that was my connection with the It's a much longer story, but we got to knock it down 6 minutes, you know? That's the best we could do.
We'll still have another 4.
Well, okay, I'll tell you a funny story. Now, you had David Oates on as a guest?
I don't recall. Maybe.
He's from Australia, you know, and he has this theory that he can listen to things played in reverse, and he can decipher it and come up almost like a polygraph test, and come up with the truth, listening to things played backwards.
It sounds like an Australian dude who did reverse speech that I had on before. Yeah. It must be the same guy.
That Simpson guy, you know, interesting guy. Had kind of there was some talk behind the scenes that he had this messianic complex, and he thought the reverse speech was going to be to bring up the apocalypse, and then he was going to rise from the apocalypse, and he was going to be the savior of all mankind with reverse speech. And this is the word that came out from his girlfriends, by the way, to Art Bell. And I talked to all these people, and I heard all the stories. But really funny is because no one knew who I was in this. Everyone thought I was either Art Bell or the FBI or the CIA or something. There was some kind of on these message boards and investigating everybody, right? So in helping to settle this negotiation, Oates tells me that he wants to settle, but he has all these bills with his lawyer. He has all these legal fees, and if you could just help him out with the legal fees, he'll drop his end of the lawsuit. So I go back to Bell and I says, hey, he says he gets these legal fees. Bell says, no, he doesn't. When he sent over a fax, by mistake, he faxed over his retainer agreement with his lawyer. Okay. So he faxes it to me. So now I have David Oates' retainer agreement with his lawyer where I see he paid him $1,500. So I go back to Oates and I says, hey, man, you lied to me. You don't have any legal fees. It was only $1,500. I saw the retainer agreement. And he goes, who are you? Who are you? Like he was convinced at that point that I had his phones tapped, I had cameras on him, I had guys following him. So, but meanwhile, it was his own stupidity, man, faxing over his retainer agreement.
Yeah. There is a lot of paranoia and stupidity within the truth movement, and anybody who denies it is a disinfo agent. You know,
very good.
I mean, this information and the things that we deal with can actually drive you nuts, particularly if you take it too frackin' seriously.
I hear you, man. I hear you.
Yeah, and hopefully, and I do know that the jovial, way in which I run this show has actually really made a lot of people angry, but other people, it's actually saved their life. Literally. I think a couple of years back, one of my listeners confided in my producer that they were going to commit suicide because everything was just too much until they heard this show and realized that there was a lighter side to all of this horrible stuff that we deal with, and that's the whole point here. Doesn't matter how bad the times get, as long as you have it's kind of like the Iraqis, Although they get treated like Shiite, they still maintain a Sunni disposition.
Very good. Very good.
All right. Well, Ed Opperman, thank you very much for coming on with me today. It's been a great honour and a pleasure, and various other nice adjectives. The website, for those of you who wish to look up more of his content, is emailrevealer.com, and you can also purchase his book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator. If you use the NSA search engines, you should be able to find it, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator, ironically. Ed, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vinny. Thank you very much.
All right. And thank you, excuse me, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in, and very much appreciate it. And of course, this is a listener-supported show, so if you are capable of funding this broadcast, please go to thevinnyeastwoodshow.com. There's a bank account if you wish to start up an automatic payment, and there's also PayPal options there as well. We'll see you again sometime, folks.
No matter where you live, globalism affects you. Did you know that the Vinny Eastwood Show has more subscribers than New Zealand Herald TV and is New Zealand's most popular YouTube news channel, where warm-hearted humour and a list of awesome guests talk about crucial issues which the mainstream media ignore? A show where you, the listener, can phone up with questions, comments and suggestions of guests. Vinny is building a hub to connect truthers with raw information they need to become active. He can help you gain further skills such as website building, producing audio and video, and creating revenue streams in your own multimedia environment. Because Vinny supports such a wide range of people in the truth movement, he is not government or corporate backed and relies entirely on your donations. Give now, give generously, or subscribe for $10 a month for access to ad-free video archives. Just visit thevinnyeastwoodshow.com and click donate.